Yo, yo, yo. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Neptunes Sunday. Special guest episode coming at you this week. My man, DJ R-Tistic from West Coast. What's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Man, what's good? Thank you for having me. How's everything going?
Everything is good, man. Just trying to keep it going, keep your head above
Yeah.
water, man. There's a lot going on in the world right now, but appreciate you taking the
Yeah.
time to chat with me.
Of course, man. Of course. I'm always down for that.
So let's get into it. First, I want to make sure that people get to know you, talk a little bit about yourself, talk about how you got into DJing.
For me, so I've been DJing now for about 15 years. I actually used to rap and produce when I was a kid, going up into high school and then college. Around college, when I was at FAMU, I kind of transitioned into DJing more so than producing. It wasn't anything I really planned to do initially. It was more so me being from LA and being in Florida in the mid 2000s when, like, I would say LA probably had its worst period ever. But at the same time, we still had a lot of music that we were into, even if it was from the early 2000s or 90s. So we would just have kind of West Coast house parties where I was playing all LA, and then the Bay had hyphy, so hyphy was still kind of in its peak. So I was more so just doing the house party circuit, and then the more and more I did those, it led to me being on campus and doing things on campus. Then I started doing the smaller clubs. So it was almost by accident. It wasn't anything that I was really planning to do like full time. And even then, when I was doing it at the small clubs and got back to LA around '08. It was still more so like, okay, it's cool just to have as a supplemental income on top of having the full-time job. So that's kind of where it came from.
You talked a little bit about being a fan, so I want to have that HBCU conversation real quick.
Yeah.
I'm a proud graduate of Hampton University, living in DC, spending a lot of time around Howard people. I got a lot of family and on my mom's side that went to Spelman and Morehouse.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about it, but elaborate, because I've mentioned it on the show a couple of times about just how being in the HBCU really affects your musical experience, right? Like you get to be obviously like a person like you come from the West Coast, you bring all of that with you, but then you get to, be exposed to different other regions and their sounds. But then at the same time, the sounds that were blowing up at that time. So just talk about what was going on at FAMU and how that kind of affected your musical palette.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like, because I realized that even in LA, a lot of the main DJs out here went to HBCUs, even DJ Prince and Jay Murphy and several others, because it's where when you're out there, it's like most of us have kind of an arrogance when you're 18, 19, you get to college and whatever you grew up listening to that's all you care about. And even just seeing convos on Twitter, you can just kind of tell who's never really left their hometown because they're just so stuck in their bubble of, well, we don't like this. Like a lot of debates lately have been people from certain places saying, people in our state or city don't like this certain artist or this style of music. And to me, it's like, no, you probably don't, but you've never been nowhere. So it's like at an HBCU, it's a case of everybody coming from different places. So the first year, everybody is kind of stuck up in their own stuff. Like my East Coast folks, they're all about Dipset back then. It was Dipset, peak 50 Cent, even early Joe Budden, D Block, all that before the whole battle raps thing really took off. But then my South folks, they were still a little bit more open to everything because the South hadn't fully taken over just yet around 02, 03, but by 05, 06, the South kind of ran everything, especially when it came to the party circuit. So it was where I was around that. But also you realize that everybody has their own, the same way you have pride in whatever you like the most, even if it's not commercial, everybody's the same way. So it's like everybody, of course, knew who Snoop was. They knew who Dre and Cube were, but I'm out there like, nah, but we playing Sugar Free and the East Side is back here. And then the same for like Louisiana. I first did a party for Louisiana. It was on campus for FAMU. And initially I was covering for the main DJ, and the Louisiana club had like the set. The set was the main Friday kind of block party we had every week. And at first they looked at me and they were like, well, we don't know him. Like all he knows is Lil Wayne and probably Boozy. He don't know the real Louisiana music. And I was like, yeah, I do. And then they was like, you don't know DJ Jubilee and Fifth Ward Weebie. And I was like, yeah, I do. And as soon as I left, I went on Google because I didn't know who they were, but I wasn't gonna let them know that. It was just like, let me do my research real quick. So I spent 5 hours just downloading every single New Orleans bounce song and even some of the second line music, just so I would be prepared. So just being in that atmosphere is where you realize everybody had their own thing, from Go-Go to B-More Club to Chicago Juke. I never heard the Percolator before. I ain't even know that Black folks created house till I got to FAMU, because we didn't have like the same internet resources at that level yet. And if we did, it was like it wasn't really exposed through social media. It was just you had to know to look it up at least. So a lot of it we just kind of learned being out there.
Yeah, man. And I love my time at Hampton. And I feel like, from my perspective, coming from Virginia, there's not really a ton, or like there's not really a specific Virginia sound. Around that same time that we was in school, around the same age, right? Like in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
That's when the Clips and Pharrell and them were really on a run. It was like, they knew they were from Virginia, but they didn't really view that as a sound because they were making music for so many people from across the country.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, at the same time, like that's when Houston music really started blowing up. Like,
Houston, yeah, 05 was all Houston. Yeah. Mike
Houston
Jones getting play.
Man. Mike Jones, Slim Thug, Paul Wall, like Lil Kiki, all of that, like Chopped and Screwed, like it's cool to hear you say that you heard the Percolator for the first time. Like I remember hearing probably, I guess that was when the hyphy movement like really blew up, and it blew my mind. I was like, yo, the whole going dumb thing. I was like, yo, this is crazy.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah.
And it's so dope from that experience for me to see people who lived that and bringing it to Virginia where we were at for Hampton. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's one of those things where a lot of it just looks almost weird or wild when you first see it, but then the more you're around it, it's like, okay, this is actually fire.
For sure. So
yeah,
I know music is in your family, man. Talk a little bit about your pops and how his influence kind of have a passion for music as well.
Yeah, so my dad, both of my parents are from the South. They both went to FAMU. He's from Memphis. She's from outside of Tallahassee, Quincy. And they got married 75 and moved to LA. He actually moved to LA maybe 73, but he moved to LA to be a jazz drummer. So when he got here, he connected with a lot of the artists who ended up being legends like Ndugu Chancellor and George Duke, Patrice Rushen. So it's where even when I was a kid, I was going to these studio sessions and I had no idea who I was around because as a kid, that's just who your dad is with. But I know like his friend Ndugu had all these Michael Jackson like framed pictures around the house. And I'm just thinking he's a Michael Jackson fan. And I had no idea that he played the drums on Billie Jean and PYT until I was like an adult. I just didn't even realize it. It was just like, so being around them and just hearing them play music live. And my dad played at church. My mom was in the choir. So being around that all the time. And that's how I got into production because he was composing and doing arrangements for gospel groups who were down with like Ben Tankard and early Yolanda Adams, like early 90s. So he had all this equipment that he used just to do arrangements, but I learned how to actually make beats just using that. And it was no YouTube, so it was all self-taught. I feel like if I had YouTube or somebody telling me how to do it, I would have been way more advanced at 8 and 9 years old, but it was a case of me just having to kind of figure it out and read the book.
That's what's up, man. Like, it's crazy. It made me think of a clip I just saw of Mos Def. I don't know what interview it was, but he was basically saying when it comes to people having conversations or critiquing music, it's always going to be different perspective from people who've actually tried to make it, right? Like I played trombone, clarinet, a little bit of drums in high school, middle school through high school. But then, just like you, like I hopped on Free Loops in college and was trying to do my thing and trying to, make beats for people that were rapping either on campus or back in my hometown in Richmond. So I think to hear that, you say that, I think that definitely, not gives us more credibility, but it definitely gives us a different space to be able to say like, hey, like my man said, how you gonna tell me? Ho said, how you gonna tell me to do it, but you never did it, right? Like, it's a really different conversation when you say, at least I tried it, at least I understand like what goes into the whole process of the pattern and finding the beats and chopping a sample and what that means to loop it. Like having an appreciation, I understand that no matter how slight, it's still gonna always make you appreciate the music in a different way.
Oh, it definitely does. I feel like that's one thing about it. It's where when I really got into production, like I remember I always had what's called stock drums for people who are listening who might not be familiar. Like whenever you buy keyboards or synthesizers, they have the drums that come on there. But most producers, especially for hip hop, use like sample drums, or they might even play the drums and EQ them themselves, whether it was the old MPCs or the SP12, whatever it was that they used back then. But I remember just being in the car one day and hearing a song Dre produced for Nate Dogg, and just the way it came in, the drum hit so hard. And I realized like, I got to figure out how to get like different drums to make it sound that way, because there was a simple pattern. And there was where when you have stock drums, the drums don't hit as hard. So you focus more on having a complicated, dope pattern. But Dre would just have a straight, basic, like almost a 4 on the floor type thing. But the way it knocked, it just felt different. So I was like, let me go to the studio tonight when I get home and figure out how to get sample drums and just how to get some stronger drums in there. So you definitely see it from a different angle.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously the whole concept of the podcast is Neptune. So let's get into this Neptune conversation. And I feel like it's a perfect time to have it. There's a lot. I feel like there's a resurgence of P. There's a lot. He's working. A lot of stuff is coming out. They got the whole Songwriters Hall of Fame thing this month, and something in the waters next week. So talk to us about the songs that made you really become a Neptunes fans, and are there a couple of songs that when you're DJing, you're gonna try to fit them in a set no matter what?
I would say with the Neptunes, I think the first time I really paid attention to them or realized who they were was probably Super Thug. So it was where I heard Super Thug, and that beat just sounded so crazy. I feel like, I was 24 years ago, but I remember Nori had the video for the song. I think it was just called Nori, like NRE, on the run eating. I feel like at the end of the video, they showed a quick snippet of Super Thug, and it was just I was like, yo, what beat is that? Like, that just sounds insane to me. And then next thing you know, that was the second single. So from there, I remember kind of doing some research. And once again, there was no Wikipedia back then. There was no online database, but it was just a case of we were still buying CDs. So we had to look at the credits. And I remember having the Mace CD and saw that they did Why You Over There Looking at Me. And it's like, oh, that's the same. Okay, who is that? And then the more and more that I was that was 98. So by the time it was 99, it was like they had even more songs that were getting placements. But by 2000, that's when they really were making their mark. So it was like you heard about them talked about on TV shows, on the rap cities, and then the magazines too. The magazines started highlighting them a whole lot more. So I think the beat that really just took it to that level where I was like, all right, they're like an actual problem was probably Mystical Shake Your Ass. I remember hearing that, like the exact moment of, I definitely wasn't driving yet, but I remember being in the car with my mom and pulling up at my aunt's house, and she was like, all right, get out the car and pick up whatever it is. And I was like, nah, let me hear this song. And she was like, nah, go get it. She's waiting for you. I'm like, I don't care. I have to hear the rest of this song. So it was just one of those moments where I remember hearing it like, this is crazy. So that was definitely the song. Those songs, I would say, are the ones that really got me all the way into them. And as far as my sets go now, I mean, they have so many songs out. I feel like they probably have the most songs out of anybody else that I play. I remember I was DJing at, I think it was the Gap maybe 6-7 years ago. And I was just playing songs because it was kind of the Gap in Hollywood, obviously just the crowd of everybody's going to come in there, all ethnicities and all ages. And I was just playing what I played. It just fit the vibe. And I remember one of the workers there actually made a comment to the lady who hired me saying something like, oh, he must love the Neptunes. All he's playing is Neptunes music. It was a subconscious thing. I wasn't doing it on purpose at all, but it was just for that vibe, it felt like they had so many songs that just worked. So when it comes to those specific songs, the main ones I'm probably going to play is the Usher, You Don't Have to Call, the Jay-Z, Give It to You, the Snoop, Beautiful, the Clips, When the Last Time, and even some of Pharrell's recent songs. I just heard the new one he has with Tyler, the Creator, and 21 Savage, and that one's banging. It is where Pharrell just has that sound where no matter whenever he makes a beat, it's always going to sound modern. Right. Even with Lemon and when he gave the Lemon track, him and Chad might have did that together. I'm not sure. But with Lemon, I feel like the caption that Rihanna had put up 4 years before the song dropped, talking about to the paparazzi, get the lens right. So I'm sure that they made that song 4 years before it came out, but it came out and it still sounded like it was brand new because it just had that polish to it.
Yeah, man. And that's what I think is what makes them so special. And a big reason why I became a fan is because the music always sounded so futuristic.
Yeah.
Even 20, 30 years later, it still does. In a crazy way where it's always going to feel like it's 2022 and cash in, cash out sounds like some futuristic, we on Mars stuff. And I think that's why they've been able to always, to me, I think, stand the test of time. And we're going to talk more about the new stuff later. But I definitely feel you gotta, it's a good mix of all the songs that you put in are a good mix of the classics, but then it's easy to still play those classics and have those be connected to the progression of playing some of the new joints too, and then not feel like you're playing it from different producers. It's the same thing. It's still going to be the same vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have this conversation with all our guests, and I have it with my friends all the time. And the question is who do you think is the most successful or your favorite, however you want to quantify it, frequent collaborator? Now, you from the West Coast, so if you say Snoop is okay, but I don't want you to feel like you gotta say Snoop. If you like, just be honest. Who you feel like is like of the frequent collaborators who got like 4 or 5 joints or more? You know, who do you think is the best or always hits that pocket with them?
Snoop definitely made some heat with them, but I would still say Jay overall, because Jay had so many different tracks from different eras with them that always hit. So, like, I will say that they definitely helped kind of revitalize Snoop's career. Like, it was, like I was saying, that dead period for LA. Like, I mean, it's definitely not their fault at all, but I feel like it was a case of the LA sound kind of dying off. Like, people got tired of G-Funk and even of the Dre 2001 sound around 02, 03, 04. So with that, like, one thing that people might not realize is that Snoop dropped the album in 02 called Pay the Cost to Be the Boss. And I remember the whole like summer, I was playing the unreleased version. And they basically got leaked, and the unreleased version was just very West Coast sounding. And it was, to me, it was amazing because that's what I was about. Like, it was Fred Reg, Battle Cat, those type producers, Jelly Roll. But then the actual album came out, and initially I didn't really like the real album as much because it was just like, it felt like it was trying to be too commercial. And that's when they had Beautiful, and Pharrell and Chad did Beautiful and From the Church to the Palace. And I didn't care for Church to the Palace as much, but Beautiful was like, when I first heard it, I'm like, it's cool, but it's not a West Coast banger. But I didn't have that vision at that time. I was 18, 19 or something. So I didn't realize, like, looking back, it makes sense. Like, if Snoop had dropped those West Coast tracks, nothing would have really like stuck. And he might have been kind of a has-been almost, but Neptunes giving them that production. And then next thing you know, it's Drop It Like It's Hot. A year to 2 years later. And us were actually mad because in that period, Snoop had finally did the 2 and 3 album with Warren G and Nate Dogg. We've been waiting on that for a good 10, 12 years. And that album was dope, but it was definitely very West Coast. And like right when that album dropped, they put out Drop It Like It's Hot like 2 weeks later. And that just kind of stole all the thunder. But as we see, that's one of the most legendary songs, especially from that mid-2000s era. So they definitely did a whole lot for Snoop. But overall, I would still say Jay is the best frequent collaborator with them. They gave Jay so many different types of vibes to rock with. I mean, the fact that Excuse Me versus Excuse Me Miss are, it's a remix of the original song, but they sound totally different. Yes. One is more for the two-steppers, and then one is more for the party kind of like hands up type crowd. So I'll definitely give it to him.
Yeah, man. It's crazy you mentioned that. I always love having conversations like this with people from different places. Like you mentioned in the 213 album, I loved some of those tracks, man.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Joystick,
man. It's crazy.
What's I'm like Nate Dogg on
So Fly. Yeah, I'm Fly. Yeah.
Gosh, man.
Yeah, like, he owned that one. Yeah.
Yeah, man. But yeah, I definitely like, because we actually, for the second episode of the show last summer, did like me and my partner Vogue did a little battle where she was Snoop and I was Jay. And it's like, okay, it's a conversation where like Snoop has so many, he has a bunch more just because he did the whole Bush album and like he was signed to but so you get the quantity for Snoop, but I think just like some of the quality of the Jay ones are just like, those records are just, they're big records. Snoop's big records are just, I think he might have the bigger records, right? Like, I think Beautiful is a bigger record. I think Drop It Like It's Hot is a bigger record, but then just the overall, winning percentage when you get Excuse Me, Miss, I Just Want to Love You, I Know, La La La.
Even So Ambitious and Allure.
Yeah, Allure. And, especially with the fact that Allure, like all the folklore that goes with Allure, everyone talks about how Jay-Z said that was his favorite song. And everyone talks about how much people love that being this B-side joint that everyone just loves to hear. And, obviously you have the other part of that process showing that part of it in the movie, on the Fade to Black movie, and having that interaction of P comes to the studio. Like, I think all of that helps build the momentum. And it's like, you're talking about Allure is the B-side, and it's like everyone, that's like a lot of people's favorite collaboration between them, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, one thing with Jay, I would say it was a common thing with a lot of artists in the early mid 2000s where the singles were put out to be commercial and to have appeal, but the album cuts ended up being way better, especially for Blueprint and Black Album, I feel like. And even, ironically, the main single from Black Album was initially Change Clothes and Go. And that's one of those songs that overall people did like it at the time, but they didn't love it. But you see that the album cut that they produced ended up getting more love ultimately.
Yeah, and I was crazy when we did that battle episode. I forgot to even mention Change Clothes. Like, and when I hear it, when I listen to it, I like it. But it wasn't in my mind. Like, I'm thinking about the rest of those. And you know, you're exactly right. Those album cuts on Black Album, Lucifer. I mean, Threats, like all of that.
Ninth Wonder. Yeah.
Come on, man. Like it's crazy, bro. It's crazy, bro. So it's 2022. 20 years ago, I think, is probably the moment when, like we talked about earlier, 98, 99, bubbling, 2000, okay, cool. A couple big hits in 2001. But 2002 was when they really, P and Chad really went to another level, another stratosphere with the songs. So what are some of the songs that you remember from that time? I feel like they had basically that whole year on lock.
Yeah, I feel like I would say like 01 and 02, but especially 02. Like 02 is when obviously Hot in Here dropped and Grinding dropped. Usher, You Don't Have to Call was an album cut in 01, but as a single, it dropped more so in 02. Right. And I feel like even like the 702, I Still Love You was not a big hit, but it's one of those like kind of fan favorites from that era. Even like late 01, like they had the Buster. One of my favorite tracks from that era is definitely Buster As I Come Back. That was more so late 01 on Genesis, but then the Pastor Cavassier remix part 2, that was 02. Crazy enough, like as much as he gets roasted, Bow Wow, Take You Home. When I heard that Take You Home beat, like that beat still goes. They had
that beat is fire.
Yeah, man. They had the Noriega, the Nothing. So they had so many tracks in that same year. LL Cool J, Love You Better, than the J, the Excuse Me Miss, Take a Leap Beautiful dropped on the album in 02. It was a single in 03. So they just had so many bangers on the radio at the same time.
And it was so crazy when you think about like so many singles on the radio on top of some of the stuff that's on the album cuts that it's like adding
album cuts too.
Like when you think about obviously Grinding and then the whole Lord Willing album, which is coming 20th anniversary in August, which is dope. Yeah. But then like all the non-single Justified tracks. Like,
Justified. Yeah, that was 02, right?
Yeah, man. Like that came probably like I think probably Like I Love You was like late summer and then the album dropped in the fall, but just crazy. I mean, like a couple other drinks that I think I slept on from that time. I know people don't necessarily love the song, but it was still a big deal. Beyonce, Work It Out from
Work It Out.
Austin Powers soundtrack. Like it was that was a big moment culturally. Like Beyonce's in the movie, which is wild. Her solo career was jumping off. And now she got this lead single from the movie soundtrack that got P and Chad on the saxophone. Like that was a moment that it's like, okay, cool. Like even if you don't like the song for it, like you got to acknowledge the fact that was a really important piece of the time. And of course, like having the Neptunes be involved in that is just another piece of the puzzle in terms of them just having everything go crazy that year. And then, you know, like what happened to That Boy.
Oh yeah, that was 02. Yeah, that Birdman. Yeah, that beat was always one of those freestyle favorites at that time too.
Crazy, man. The hardest beats like, that they ever did. Like, you know, Birdman rapping is what it is, but
you don't even care because the beat carried it so hard that
But you got Clips and Pushers just doing what they do like at the highest level, like crazy. Another couple songs I think that get left out too, because if you think about it, around that time, it really was, you know, kind of like Afro beats is right now. Dancehall was having a moment back then. So
it definitely was.
They had 3 joints on that Beanie Man album, and the single was
the Feel It Boy with Janet.
And then the other one was Boss Man with Sean Paul and
I remember that one. Wow.
So it's like, yo, like we just talked about Snoop and Jay-Z joints releasing a whole album for Clips, but then on the tuck, you got LL Cool J, Love You Better, and then a Beanie Man joint with Janet Jackson. Like what are we talking about, man? Like these guys were just in a different world right then, and I think that's definitely helped lay the foundation for them to have things going as crazy as they did for so long.
And I feel like one thing that we always do debate is about if they had produced for Mike. So of course we know about that whole situation with. I didn't hear the full extent of it until maybe last year or this year, but of course, we know that most of the tracks that went to Justified, along with You Don't Have to Call, were made for Mike, but Mike turned them down because he basically said, you know, I don't want something that sounds like what I did on, you know, in the Off the Wall period, and I want a Super Thug type beat. And it's where it's crazy that looking back, it does make sense because one thing about Prince and Mike is that they they never really went back to their old sounds. Like they're the type of artists that are always so progressive that even for Prince in 07, everybody in R&B was trying to make beats that sounded like Prince, but his current sound at that time was way different. So the same with Mike, when you hear like You Don't Have to Call and Rock Your Body, you can tell that they're based off the wall, Rock With You from the third verse, bridge and everything. You can tell that they're composed to be like that. So I see exactly why Pharrell and Chad made the beats to sound like that. But I guess Mike did want something that was more futuristic. And I actually wonder what would have worked better for him, because overall, most of us felt that Invincible was, a letdown for sure. And like, even just You Rock My World to me was like an 8.5 track. Like it's a solid track, but it's not touching. You don't have to call it Rock Your Body. Like I feel like it's not the same level. So I do wonder what it would have been like. And maybe it should have been a case of them in the studio together versus this. I'm sure they're so busy. They're just like, here's what we made, but they should have been in the studio where as the beat is getting made, Mike is like, nah, like give me something that sounds like this. And that could have been magical.
For sure. I definitely appreciate that part of it. And you always, it's a big what if, right? Like I think from an artistic standpoint, you got to be willing. I think it's dope that he was willing to say like, he's open to getting stuff from them, right? Like he's willing to say, cool, these guys are hot. Let them get a shot. But then to not like let them do their thing. And P talked about that, and he talks about it in interviews all the time. It's like people come to him and they have the most success when the people let him do his thing. Like if you come to me because you want something different. So usually if people say they want something that sounds like something they already did, then it don't work, right? Like I think that's a part of the whole process with them. And like, you think about too, like there was the whole interview with what's my man's name? With Young Jock, where he was talking about they played Blue Magic for him. And he was like, man, this ain't for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like would it have been as big a record as it was for Jay-Z? Maybe not, but maybe it would have been. I do actually like the two tracks that I like. It's a joint Hell Yeah that he got from them on that same album, that it was from that same session. I think it ended up being pretty dope, but it wasn't it wasn't outside the box enough. You know what I'm saying? Like I think you gotta trust Peter to do his thing. And I also think that to your point too about being in the studio with them is a different vibe. Like
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Just the way that Pusha has talked about how much Pete pushed him to be great and actually produced him on this Almost Dry album in terms of, the cadence and the vocal tones, and actually like not just here's the beats, go rap on them. It's like, yo, you gotta get out of that. You gotta get into your bag and really make yourself a character and really tell stories and really, take it to the next level. So I think that's the genius of P.
For sure. I feel like it's one of those things that's kind of a result of the modern era of kind of shipping beats, because back in the 70s, 80s, I feel like it was more so you're in the studio with them anyway. So it's like whenever you can just tell the difference. And even just seeing how Pharrell was with Kanye on the Genius documentary, just seeing how he was in there with Kanye kind of giving his feedback, and just kind of like he didn't even have to give feedback on the song itself to where he changed anything. It was more so him just kind of being there to let them know, like, yeah, you are next up, and giving them that confidence.
And that's something that Pusha talked about too, is like he said, he just wanted to hear him rap. So he would send the beats and he would just rap. But P was like, nah, like we need to sit down and we need to play with these songs, and what do you like here and what don't you like? So I think that's dope, man. And I think the music definitely, we as listeners definitely benefited from that, because I think Almost Dry is one of the best products that's come out in the past few years or so, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Production-wise, it's crazy.
Yeah, man. So like, let's get into that. For, like I said, 20 years ago, and now it's 20 years later from 2002, and P is on another run. Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts about some of the new tracks? Like, what are some of your favorites from the recent releases? Because I think there's a lot of, I mean, and both of us are active on Twitter, right? Like, I think there's a lot of people who are just sometimes wanting to be haters just for the sake of it.
All the time, yeah.
But
they
then,
bored,
like,
so yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also a level of people who are not informed enough to be giving opinions about stuff. So I just feel like I saw a little bit of hate from this Cash In, Cash Out record. People saying P fell off. Like, what do you think about the new tracks that have come out in the past 4 or 5 years or so?
I feel like he is on another run. I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's a third run, but it was where he had a strong comeback around that, if you want to call it a comeback, but that Happy and Get Lucky era where he was just making huge, massive pop records. But I feel like at this time it's where one thing that you've seen me and other DJs complain about is how mundane a lot of the club stuff is, how everything is just so trappy. Everything is just kind of like same slow tempos and so drugged out. So it's already refreshing whenever he makes something. And I just wish that a lot of listeners were more open to the sounds that he has given. Because, like, of course, he has the Brent Faiyaz song with Drake, and that one, along with the Lotto Real one, have a similar production. They have the kind of same kick going on in there. So those are definitely two of my favorites. And I feel like he definitely can go on another run where at this point in time, it's never going to be like it was in those early 2000s. Like, he really was, like, I'm not going to say he was the original super producer, but he really was. I would say Neptunes really were the first ones to where every artist in every different genre had to go to the same producer for a sound. The 90s, it was where even if you had dominant producers, it was still within camps. Like, not every single artist went to Jimmy Jam and Terry. Not every single R&B singer went to Babyface. Not every East Coast rapper went to Pete Rock or Premier, and not every West Coast rapper got to Dre if they even could, of course. But it's like, I feel like once it, like Timbaland and the Neptunes basically came where it was an era of, okay, we want to get on the radio, we have to get a track with them. So that's how you got even the licks best you can type tracks. So all that to say, I don't see that happening. It really doesn't have to happen again, because I mean, it's almost insane to see how many different sounds they had back then. Because even when I made that O2 mix video of everything he had made, a lot of folks were saying, like, he has a signature sound, obviously. And it's like, a Neptunes beat when you hear it, but it's where you hear all those beats and it's like, I could tell they're all Neptunes beats, but they all sound different. Right. It wasn't like they're all the exact same beat every time. So, because when you compare even the ones you mentioned, they all sound different. And even the new ones sound different. The Cash In, Cash Out versus what he did with Pusha versus the Lotto Real one, they all sound totally different. They could be different producers almost at this point. So it's where I think he can probably go on another strong run where it might not be him dominating 40% of the radio, but he doesn't have to do that. It's just where if he's just hitting these different artists and targets up, it's still gonna have the same impact.
And it's like, we live in a different time, right? Like, the radio isn't as important. So like,
that's true too. Yeah, radio's not as important anymore.
He can still dominate, and it's always is dope to see the new generation still respect it and recognize the greatness that they want to go and get it. Like, to hear Gunna on, that the Functional Addict joint from the Nego Project, and you said Lotto, right? Like, he did a couple things from Moneybag. Like, to see the new generation of folks still understand, like, there's value in it, and let's keep it 100. This is a business, right? And so there's value in it from a business perspective. If someone knows that I got P on it, that's going to add a different level of credibility. That's going to add a different level of wave. Like, okay, cool. Like, you serious about it.
Yeah, for sure.
At the same time, just from a music standpoint, the music is still pretty good to me. Like, I think, and obviously, like, I have a whole podcast about these guys, so I'm a little bit biased. But
I mean, nothing wrong with it. But yeah.
But I rock with them. Like, I mean, even the Jack Harlow joint, I think is got a little bit of a vibe to it that is like, yo, like, this man P can still get in the bag, man. Like, and it's dope. And so I was listening earlier to Zane Lowe interview P the other day after the release of Cash In, Cash Out. And he was basically saying how, ASAP Ferg woke him up. Like, when he was in this transition in the pandemic, they were living in LA because they had the triplets. And then he was like, I got to get back into it. I got to get back to the East Coast. And one of the first people he got to was Ferg. And it was like, Ferg brings a different type of energy. Like, you can't just be
all the time. Yeah.
You can't mail it in and bring some, low key stuff. Like you talked about, all these slow, like, dreary trap beats. Like, that's not Ferg's style. So
it's not.
So he said Ferg woke him up. And I think that's evident when you listen to both Green Juice and Paper Place is one of my favorite tracks from that Nego project, like the energy of that song. So yeah, it's dope. It's dope to hear him talk about that. And it's dope that it's a person like Ferg, who was someone who was respected and got hits, but ain't like, it ain't like he said Jay-Z woke him up or he said Snoop woke him up. Like he said, which is dope. That means that he's like trying to get it popping. So it's cool. Like, I like this new music. I'm happy to see, him having this run. But yeah, man, I think it's a good time for my man P. And this energy from people who are new in the game, energy from people who've been in the game for a while, and it don't matter. It's still great music.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's one thing about it. I feel like he's the type that it doesn't matter like who you are as an artist. He respects you the same way, so he still puts the same energy in. So it's where you can tell certain producers almost mail in tracks to an artist if it's not like an A level, but he'll give a fire beat to somebody just because it fits their style, or it might even be a case of him just really tapping in with them so much that he he can feel like what they're into, and then he gives them, the best thing for their ability. So he's always specialized in that.
Yeah, man. Like one of my favorite tracks from like the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years is him and Uzi on Neon Guts.
Neon Guts is fire, yeah. And it sounds a lot like the track he did for the Carters. Nice, kind of the same little bounce to it.
Yeah. And I think like just the energy, he's rapping on there, and Uzi, who, I think we talked about this before in another episode. Like there's a couple of people in this new generation that you look at as kind of being children of Pharrell. I think Uzi up there,
yeah.
and Tyler definitely for sure is up there.
Tyler definitely, yeah.
So when he links with them, and it's like, okay, cool. Like he went from being this fan to being a peer to now he's being that, okay, cool. He's on the same level. Like it's dope to hear him connect with people like that are inspired by him, and now he gets to work with them and create great music with them.
Oh, for sure, because that's one thing too. I feel like he doesn't age anyway, so whenever he's rocking with these young artists, like it always fits. It never feels like a father and son collaboration. It feels like they're still peers almost, even if he's been around 20 years longer.
Yeah, man, it's dope. Appreciate you coming on the show, bro. Before we let you go, tell the people what you got coming up, where they can catch you at DJ in the next few months or so. What you got going on?
Definitely. Summertime. If you're in LA, I have a whole lot of parties coming up. I have a Juneteenth party I'm doing at Rush Street, but I have a lot of stuff in LA. I'm at the Dime each and every Monday. I'll be at Elevate every other Saturday. I'm at Blind Barber every other Tuesday. So basically just follow me at Instagram and Twitter at DJ R-Tistic. I know I'll be making some trips this summer. I'll be on the East Coast, Philly, Jersey, New York. I'll be in Atlanta later on in the summertime. Might be in Miami as well. So getting all my trips together right now. And of course, I'll be at FAMU Homecoming. So that's all coming up. And online, I have a podcast as well. I have one called Behind the Wheels with my boy EB, who went to Howard. So we talk about everything Black music related on there. And I'm on Twitch every Wednesday. Right now, I'm doing a series with Rock the Bells called Hip Hop Diaspora. So we have 2 more episodes coming up. One is going to be about the evolution of hip hop in the South. And then the last one's going to be about hip hop in the Midwest. So yeah, just tap in. I have a lot of mixes that I have on Mixcloud. So have a couple of those I'm putting out the next couple of weeks as well.
You got a lot going on, man. Homecoming season is back. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, because last year we had a homecoming and it was people were there, but it didn't feel like it was all the way back yet.
Yeah, so I haven't even tried to go back to Hamptons.
Yeah.
I guess we was all at homecoming 2000. I guess that was October 2019. And
yeah,
it seems like that was so long ago, bro. I'm excited to have it back. Ain't nothing like a HBCU homecoming. For those of you who have never experienced it, try to. Doesn't matter where, just pick whichever one's closest to you and go check it out. We don't discriminate against HBCUs here. Like we all fam. Yeah,
seriously. Yeah, that's how we are. I feel like if you have especially if you have friends or family who went to one, like whatever one they went to, just go with somebody who you even halfway know, just so you know where to go, what parties to hit up. Because it's so much going on for each one. So just knowing which exact crowd, but it's something for everybody. Like a lot of folks might feel intimidated. Like I didn't go to one, so I don't want to be left out. Just you put on the same alumni shirt. Nobody's checking you. Like,
it's all love. It's all
love. Yeah.
Just go hop at a tailgate, act like you belong.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. That's all it is. So no, I appreciate you for having me on today for sure.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your time. Everybody, appreciate y'all for listening. Catch us next Neptune Sunday. Peace and love.
Out.